Okay, I think we're recording. Welcome, everybody. This is the latest edition of the Scholar Gypsies. I'm delighted today to have Patrick E. Walsh from Kilkenny. He may be familiar to some of you from the work he's done on examining excess debts in Kilkenny, and it's made a lot of noise around the social media and Telegram groups, the evidence that he's found. So I thought it'd be a great idea to get Patrick in here today to talk about his research on excess debts in Kilkenny and what he found there, and also we might take a longer look at the wider country as well, just in general terms. Patrick's data was published in the Kilkenny Free Press and Jimmy Rattigan's publication. KilkennyPress.ie, and I think that's Jimmy Rattigan is the publisher there. So, Patrick, I suppose without further ado, welcome. And I suppose my first question is, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to become so interested in excess debts in County Kilkenny.
Okay, Jerry. Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me on here. It's a great opportunity because I know a lot of people tune into you. So my background is I'm a Kilkenny man. I was born and bred in Thomastown, which is 10 miles from Kilkenny City. And I still live here, and I've worked in Kilkenny City all my life. Nothing out of the normal in my life, just going along, doing the best I can until March 20. And we all know what happened then. Now, I didn't go along with it from the start. I took it as what they call a psyop. Basically, I thought this lockdown, this whole thing was just to cover the economy collapse. So, I didn't go along with it. I didn't wear the masks. I didn't whatever the people had to do. That was my way of maybe retaining my dignity, self-esteem, but I wasn't achieving anything. It was just for my own feel better inside. So that went on for a year or so, and then the vaccine started coming up in February, March 21, even before that. And again, I just didn't sit with me. Didn't feel right. Vaccines in the past always took 6 or 7 years before anyone thought they were safe, and here they are. They had them in 6-7 months. Didn't feel right. I'm not scientifically minded. I just have a good gut feeling about stuff, and I didn't go with it. And again, I didn't do anything about it. I didn't complain. I didn't sign up for anything. I couldn't go in and have my pint, or I was like everyone else in the same position. But I also had the added thing. My son's wedding was arranged for April 21 in Spain. And okay, my other son wasn't jabbed. I wasn't jabbed. So we weren't going. Simple as that. We booked our flights, we booked our hotel, we did everything. And I found out I was going to my son's wedding the day before we went out because of one of them lateral tests, whatever they're called, I don't know what they are, that I had to pay 70 or 80 euro so I could go to my son's wedding to some pharmacist, which was just scandalous. And all this stuff builds up on you, Jerry. You might think, say, don't let it get you, but it does. Now, where we get to the debts thing is, even before the lockdown started, you're a countryman like me. I had a link to rip.ie so that I'd be notified of any debts in the Kilkenny area. And the idea was I wouldn't miss funerals that of people, that I think I should be going to. And I was always getting the emails, they might come once or twice a week. They wouldn't mean an awful lot. Kilkenny's a small place. But I noticed a serious difference from March, April 22. It started, the frequency of the emails was coming along, and I'd comment to my partner on it, and I would click on some of them, and I'd see this magical phrase, sudden and unexpected, that we all know so well now. And again, I did nothing until a week, I think it was early October 22. I think I got either 2 or 3 emails in the space of 24 hours. I think 7 people had died in Kilkenny in that period, which wouldn't have died in a week previously. and 3 of them out of the 7 were sudden and unexpected, and that triggered it for me. That's it. I said, I'm putting something together here. I can't keep saying to myself, these figures aren't right, this doesn't make sense. And of course, I was aware all along of what all Robert Malone and all these people were saying, and all the other great people who've done work out there putting figures out. Of course, I was aware of it. This wasn't me thinking I'd discovered gold or something. I just decided I'm going to put figures on it for Kilkenny and keep it local, and that's what I did. I put the figures together for July to October, 4 months. That's the original figures I did, and I came up with quite shocking figures. The first time I did it, I came up with compared to 2019, I did 5 years, 2018 to 2022, with the same 6 months. I did 2 years pre-COVID for obvious reasons. I didn't want 2019 to be a glitch period. As it happens, 2019 was a bit lower than 2018, but no big difference. I think it was about 3 or 4% difference. But the original figures I produced for them 4 months showed an increase in deaths of 30% for them periods in Kilkenny. And in the sudden deaths, the increase was 121%. Now we can go into.
Now let's hold it. Let me just hold you there now, because you brought up 2 stats that are quite stunning. The increase in sudden deaths is one I wasn't familiar with. But before we go there, just give people. I just want to let people know a bit about your background. You're a certified public accountant, so. Diving into figures and numbers is, I won't say it's a passion, but it's part, it'll be part of your makeup to forensically go through data.
I think so, yeah. I wouldn't call myself a statistician or anything like that. But when you work as an accountant, and I have since I'm 18 years of age, I think I have a great feeling for a thing called muscle memory. No matter what you do, if you keep repeating it, it comes to you naturally in the end. And I spot patterns in figures when I work in a place and we produce management accounts every month. And I look at a lot of figures, and if something's wrong, it jumps out at me because I'm looking at them the whole time. And yeah, it's not a talent. It's not that I'm academically better than anyone else. But yes, your memory learns to spot patterns, and more importantly, spot aberrations in what the norm is. And that's I won't say that's what I think I'm good at. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the thing is with the data, because I followed RIP.ie, and it takes a lot of concerted effort to go through the RIP.ie data, because one of the issues I ran into with RIP.ie, and sometimes I see people quoting RIP.ie, and they're not allowing for certain factors like, for example, duplicate deaths, duplicate names in RIP.ie, where you'd often find a person might have been born and raised in Galway, got married and moved to Kilkenny, and quite often you'll see 2 entries in RIP.ie. So there'll be a lot of stuff like that you need to forensically go through. Did you find that was a tiresome process or a laborious process?
I wish I could say it took an awful lot of work. No, it didn't, because when you go in, if you put in Kilkenny, the point you make is valid, Jerry, if you're looking at the whole of the country. But if you were to go into Kilkenny for that person, they will only appear in Kilkenny once.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is duplications in Kilkenny because some people would have moved from parishes, and if they spent a long time in 2 parishes, they will appear twice. And what I did is I just took them out. You're talking about on average 80 deaths in Kilkenny in a month in the old times. And I would go into a month, I would cut and paste the link, the whole lot, onto an Excel spreadsheet. I would take out the duplicates, and it was easy enough because they're in order.
Mm-hmm.
And you just take out the second one, and you're left with the people who have died published under Kilkenny for that month. Now, there is valid points. Some of them people might have died in England and originally from Kilkenny, and they will appear. But that will happen every year. That will happen in 2019, 20, 21, 22. And if you treat everything the same, you're comparing like with like. The only way something like that could throw out figures is if there was a mass death of Kilkenny people in Birmingham and it suddenly appeared in RIP.ie.
And I suppose the question there, the statistic you brought up there, 121% in sudden deaths are. How did you come to that? How can you step us through how you ascertained that information?
Okay. First of all, I did the overall deaths for a month. They're on my spreadsheet. I've kept that spreadsheet, and the link. I've given this spreadsheet to media organisations for everyone to verify, and on that link, if you click on it, it goes to rip.ie for that person. Now, on that spreadsheet, anyone that I said was sudden or unexpected death, I put an S beside them for anyone to check. Now, I'll tell you how I came up with sudden and unexpected. And this, there has to be a certain amount of subjectivity to this, Jerry. But just because you cannot be completely objective does not mean you ignore figures like this. That's just a coward's way out. And I'll stand by any figures that if someone wants to go through my figures and come back with a different figure with sudden and unexpected, that's fine. We can argue about the one or two differences we have. But don't anyone stand back and say that you cannot come up with figures like this. So I'll just go through what I did. When someone dies and you click on the link to find out the funeral arrangements, if that person, sometimes when that person died, and it used to appear a lot more in the past, I think, they would say died suddenly and unexpectedly. Simple as that. Okay? That's self-explanatory. That's an S. That's a sudden and unexpected. Now, at that stage, if there's no sudden unexpected, and I think this person looks healthy or young, the pictures are always going to be the good pictures anyway. I think that's what I was saying. But if this person is under 70, which is, that's as far as I'm concerned, anyone dying under 70, you question it. I would click on it. I would click on the condolences. And then I would go to scroll through the condolences and see comments like, I'm shocked at the sudden and unexpected. And people use that phrase lately, I think, to get across that this person has died in unusual circumstances.
Now let's just let's pause there, because I want to ask you a question specifically on that, because when we were speaking on the phone, one of the questions I had, or one of the questions I had in my mind after talking to you is, the eyes on RIP.ie by state agencies and average citizens must be huge. Did you notice, and you're good at spotting aberrations, did you notice a change in the phraseology of deaths, or would you have any comment on that in terms of, we'll say 3 years ago, before the COVID era, saying died suddenly and unexpected didn't carry any weight really to people, the average person, other than, something unexpected happened in their death. Whereas now, that phrase, sudden death, sudden and unexpected, carries quite a weight, and I think possibly, a lot of people are looking for that phrase when they go on RIP.ie nowadays. I was just wondering, have you noticed any kind of slight changes in the pattern of way deaths are being described, or any stuff like that?
I have, and I don't, whether I'd be definitive.
I'm not asking you to be definitive, but I'm wondering.
What I have noticed is, and this has been, just off the top of my head, in the past, the phrase it would say suddenly at home or sudden and unexpected. It would be in the detail of the funeral arrangements, whereas now it seems to be appearing. The detail seems to be down below, and it seems like someone is insisting on it's put above. Now, maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe that's just different undertakers have different ways of doing it. But there's no doubt about it, Jerry. That phrase is loaded now, and I can understand. And I do know, looking at the condolences now, I don't have any doubt that people who know what happened are deliberately putting that phrase into their condolences. So people like me will pick it up. Now, you could be a total conspiracy theorist and say they're trying to throw us off, or you can say they're planting seeds of the truth. But
I don't know how much. I don't know how much luck you'd have doing that on the death of some poor person.
Yeah, I don't.
Um,
I don't buy it.
Yeah.
But see, the reason I'm saying that is someone could come along and challenge me on how I'm coming up with on my sudden and unexpected, and that's fair enough.
Which would be great. Which would be great, because all you're trying to do is have a discussion on it. You're not trying to say, look at me here, I'm right. You're just looking for somebody to have a conversation with you, and
that's all I want.
Back and forth.
Yeah, and I can talk to people like you, Jerry, and other people who will discuss this with me, and that's fine, and I will talk to anyone. But media out there totally ignore me. And I send them the spreadsheets. I send the Excel spreadsheets that they can click in and question everything. I have a spreadsheet, 6 months, 12 months, 6 months for 5 years. That's 30 tabs on it with links to all these deaths, links to the sudden. And I'm up there to be knocked down. I've sent it to politicians and they just, ignore it.
Okay, so that's a good segue into having a chat about what you did when you made your initial discovery on the initial tranche of data that you analysed for that 4 months. What did Patrick E. Walsh do with it? Or did you know what you were going to do with it? Or what happened there?
Okay, I'll tell you what I thought would happen, and then I'll tell you what happened. For the last 6-7 years, I just mainstream media. I wouldn't pay any attention to it. I stopped watching news after I loved following current affairs all my life, and I just stopped because I knew I was being fed a narrative, and I knew it was lies, and I knew it was just being stuff fed into my brain. So I stopped. But still, I was naive enough when I got these figures on a local Kilkenny's a small place, and I said, my God, the local paper here, Kilkenny People, is around for 130, 40 years. KCLR is an established local radio station, and there's a few more small magazines to hand out and stuff like that, and online stuff, but they're the big ones. And I was naive enough to think, I sent this stuff out on an email to them and the 5 Thomastown County councillors on a Friday evening, and I was naive enough to think that the Kilkenny People and KCLR would be knocking my door down. I gave them my phone number, address, email, and one person rang me within 15 minutes. Kilkenny Press.ie, Jimmy Rattigan, who I hadn't said anything to because I didn't know it existed. And he says to me, someone must have leaked it to him, obviously. I didn't ask him, and he didn't tell me. It doesn't matter to me. But he says straight away to me, he says, I want to look at your data. He says, if I'm happy with it, I'm going to go with this. That's what he said to me. Fair play. And he's gone with me ever since. And he straight away put it in his online, KilkennyPress.ie. And I think that blew it out there, especially for a few people in the locality. But no response, except City Radio in Kilkenny rang me the following week. They had seen it on, I had emailed them, and they saw Jimmy's article. And to be fair to them, they rang me and asked me would I go on, I don't know what the name of the show was, but Eugene Doyle was the presenter. And at the time, I thought, look, KTR are the big boys. They'll be along. They'll want me. I didn't want to go on anyway because the story shouldn't have been about me. This is about them using verifiable data to ask the questions. And I said no. And Jimmy came back to me a few days later in the week. He said they'll be back on to me. They want you to go on. And I said, okay. And we went on. It was pre-recorded. And I have to say they were very good. Eugene Doyle said we have to pre-record this for, it's a touchy subject, and I had no problem with that. And Jimmy come on too, and we did 20 minutes, and we discussed the amount of deaths and how I did it and how I calculated stuff. And to be fair, he's the only one that mentioned vaccines, that they had to be in the equation, and I was very surprised that he did. And I was shocked because I had said to him beforehand I wasn't going down that road because I didn't want someone putting a tinfoil hat on my head and I only bringing out this data. And Patrick Walsh is dismissed. That's fine. I don't care. But the data is important, and people would tweet that away as well.
And did that go out? Did they put that out?
They did.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
they did it was a fantastic job, and I no, excuse me, I sent it. Like you know John Waters. I've been in touch with John Waters. I don't know John Waters personally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I sent him that. I sent him the original data.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in touch with him about something before. I can't. I had his email anyway, and I sent him the original data. I sent him the link to the radio interview and a few Jimmy's articles,
Mm-hmm.
and he went with it on his Substack Diary of a
Yeah.
And he had the link to the radio show, and he really pushed on it because he could see the bigger picture that I didn't see, that this was this appearing on any radio station in Ireland was and having a radio presenter talking about vaccines in the same breath as excess dying was just unheard of. And he really pushed it, and I think between Jimmy's website and John's pushing it in on SoundCloud, people, I think 1,200 people clicked on and listened to that radio interview afterwards. Mm-hmm. If you look at the normal connections to their SoundCloud, it's about 20 people. So
that's your story went around the country, we'll say, in people that are open to consuming a certain amount of alternative Irish media content. So I definitely saw, I've seen it multiple times over the last couple of months, shared in WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, Facebooks, Twitter. Like I've seen it crop up. Now I haven't listened to the radio interview, and it wouldn't surprise me because John Waters would pick up on that. And to be honest, his platform is probably it's probably bigger than most local newspapers, in terms of, I'm sure it is. So, and it would have got an airing outside of even Ireland, probably with that, which is good. So I suppose you had Kilkenny Free Press, you had the City Sound interview. When that went out, have people reached out to you on a personal basis to say, members of the public, or has it raised much? Have people come to you with other information?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
I think first of all, I see my name on the screen there, Patrick E. Welch, and it is my name. But no one in Thomastown would know me by that, except my mother.
Okay.
She knows where the names came from.
All
but
right.
there was a journalist came down around the town here a couple of weeks ago looking for me, and spent 2 hours walking around all the shops looking for Patrick E. Welch, who was putting stuff out, and no one knew who I was.
Who are you?
So they did track me down in the end. But and my mother had a great instinct. She went into the hardware the next morning, and the fella saying, do you know who Patrick E. Welch is? And she says, yeah, I do. Of course I do. That's my son. And they had no idea, because I've known by another name since I'm 7 or 8 years of age.
Oh,
but
okay.
But the long and the short of it is, no, I didn't have anyone reaching out to me. And one of the things I thought would happen is that people would contact Jimmy and say, can you put me in touch with him so he can show me how he can do it for my county?
Yeah.
Now, it didn't happen. It's happened since I put my email address out there, and I think 10 or 11 different people have got how I did it from me, and I presume they're working away themselves.
So you're interested in helping people, showing people how to do, like, you have no problem if I put your email in the link to this conversation for them to talk.
No, my email is out there, Jerry. I have no problem.
Yeah, that's fine, because I know there's quite.
Sorry, I made a decision when I decided to go with this. I'm going to be out there. My face is going to be out there. My name is going. You can't put out data like this and be hiding behind the corner saying, this, that, and the other. I'm either going to stand up with it and try and defend it, or I'm going to shut up, one or the other.
Has there been any repercussions for you, work-wise, or is any kind of comments in that direction, or have you any worries in that regard?
No, the people I work for are great people. I wouldn't have any concerns whatsoever. I don't think they're aware of this. That I've done this stuff. They would have known from the start that I didn't buy into the. But that's okay. It wasn't a problem at work. They're
That's
good
great.
people. I've never had
Yeah,
there 50 years, and I wouldn't have any problem with that.
No, that's. I was just curious because that's one of the things. A number of people from time to time email me, or they'll send a message on one of the social media platforms with information and the big, our stories, our tips. And one of the big concerns that a lot of people have about stepping forward is their job. They're afraid of what standing up means for their job. So it's great to hear that you haven't come across that in this instance. I suppose what I want to ask you next, Patrick, you did the first 4 months. We'll say July, August, September, October. How did individually November and December stack up on the statistics? Because this is only an anecdotal sense, but I have a sense that the flu season, if we call it that, this time around was probably worse than anything we experienced over COVID in terms of the volumes of people that seem to be sick in my own circle this past month and a half, 2 months. I'm just wondering what did you find from Kilkenny's statistics over those couple of months?
Basically, Jerry, I used the phrase in December in one of the articles, absolute carnage. November, December. Okay, when you put the figures, the 6 months together, I went from 30% up on 2019 to 41% up. Now, December, I halfway through December, I said to Jimmy, something's going on here. This has just gone crazy. And I put together figures for 19. Jimmy said it to me, okay, let's do something. We'll put together figures for 19 days and compare it to 19 days in 2019. And you won't believe this. It was over 100% up. Now, it came back down. It came back down to about, I think it was 70% up. December was on December 19. Now, I get very wary, Jerry, of using percentages because people out there are going, oh, Jesus, will he stop talking? Just
No. We're not. To be honest with you, I don't think we're getting half enough of this type of information. Especially the beauty of what you've done is you've made it specific to one county, so it's hard. Even though it's great to have the overall Ireland context, but you live in the county that you produce the statistics on. The people that are you can drive, or some of the people that are dying. It's very easy to kind of even just check it out on a personal basis. So I don't think that at all. My own feeling was I was checking out. I was keeping an eye on RIP.ie all of December, and I was just going page after page. Like there was some days there was 3-4 pages of deaths over the Christmas period, and I was like, this can't be right. So it certainly tallies up to. I didn't go to any of the trouble you went to, but I had this sense. I said, geez, December seems very, but I had no sense of whether maybe December's always like that. But you're basically saying 70% at the end of the month.
Well, I'll give you Kilkenny. I mean, in 2019, in December, 70 people died in Kilkenny. Okay? In 2022, 128. That's 58 extra. That's nearly 100%. What's that? That's 70%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And just as a matter of interest, because we'll say December 2020 was a definite pandemic peak time as well. How did the numbers stack up with 20 and 21?
Well, say if we go November, December, I have these figures here. November and December 2020, there was 141 deaths. In November, December 22, there was 169. So that's whatever, an increase.
So you had 100.
Yeah. In the peak of the pandemic, there was an extra In December, we had 128 compared to 86. That's 42. That's nearly 50% up on the so-called peak of pandemic year. And in November, it was 99 to 55. So that's 44. That's 90%. I mean, Jerry, sometimes I even like that's only I see so many figures. That's only jumped out at me now that November, November compared to the pandemic year is up nearly 100%. And what the hell is going on in this crazy world? We have a Department of Health. I can go into the contact I've had with them whenever you want. But,
absolutely, go for it.
I'm sorry, sometimes when I start talking about this stuff, because I get to talk about it very little, and I get a bit head up, and
it's all right.
I won't I won't get too excited, but
go on, go ahead.
But I just if I get a bit emotional about it, don't
I know I will.
Don't worry about it.
So tell me, so let's start. Let's dive into you referenced the Department of Health there. So you obviously sent this on to more than media sources. You sent it to the Department of Health and some county councillors.
I started with my 5 councillors in Thomastown. Listen, I'll just pass over that. Then well, just before you pass over,
no response, or
no response.
Zero
response. And Jimmy Rattigan followed them up after his first publication, looking for a comment from each of them. 2 of them said they'd ring back. One of them made the mistake of giving him a comment that there was what did he say? There was an alarming spike in deaths in his area, and I've hung that comment around his neck ever since. That's the only response, and none of the ones that said they'd ring back. They all said they got it, or they'd go looking for it because they were told it was in their councillor email, and none of them got back. So I sent him to the rest of the county councillors, and I'm going to use this man's name because it's important to what happened. Councillor Andrew McGuinness got back to me in a phone call, and he would be John McGuinness's son, the TD. Okay,
and he got back to me. Yeah, he'd be a Fianna Fáil TD or Fianna Fáil councillor. Yeah,
and he'd be a fairly well-known name around around the country. So Andrew was very. Andrew asked me about the. He went through the figures. He asked me. He's very concerned, and he said he would submit a question to the minister, looking for a comment on the excess deaths. Now, he sent it off. The minister sent a reply, which I have here, to an email address. It wasn't emailed to me, but I got it. Okay, and there's 2 pages of statistics and links to the CSO things going back years and years, and it's all waffle and whatever, and it's all true, and nothing wrong with it, but it comes down here and it says to us, for quarter 1 and quarter 2, there's a combined total of 310 deaths, which have been registered in Kilkenny for 2 quarters, which is 6 months. Now, 310 would be in line with 2019. There was 321, and 2018 335. In other words, this paragraph said there's nothing to see here. Move on. Okay, that's on face value. It doesn't use those words because it knows they'll be cut out on it. It just says, leaves it there for you, and you go and you see there's only 310 deaths in 2022, and you go up the line and see up here it's only 321. Nothing to worry about. So I checked all the links. I went into the CSO, and their figures were correct. But Jerry, when they added them up, they came up with exactly 100 deaths less than the correct figure. They have 310 in it. I can show it here to people who want to see it. Yeah. The actual figure was 410, which when you compare it to the other stats, showed an increase of, I think, just 27%. I was going with a figure at 30% at that stage. And,
how did you find out the difference? How did you prove the difference was wrong? Did you go on the CSO website and see?
No. The difference is, all the figures are correct, Jerry. What they did is they added them up and took 100. Well, I'm not accusing anyone of taking 100 off it. They got 100 less than they should have got in their answers.
So
They added 2 figures or 2 or 3 figures and come up with 100 less. They should have got 410. They got 310. And it just happens that the 310, when looking at the figures above, you would say to yourself, there's no excess deaths in Kilkenny in 2022.
So they
And
taught us the totals wrong on that, and it made it look
conveniently, and it's signed by the private secretary for the Minister of Health.
okay. When you discovered, but again, that was for Q1 2022.
Yeah, they were, yeah, exactly.
So that's before you were starting to, like, I think we all started to notice the spike from the summer. Would say Q2, Q3, Q4 will be a hell of a lot more interesting. You would have think,
yeah.
But as far as I am aware, I think they're trying to use the data breach the cyber attack as an excuse for some anomalies in the data for Q2 and Q3 in 2021, which I find ridiculous, because you can a person's date of death all that data can be fixed in hindsight if that did happen. It's a nonsense.
Jerry, are they actually saying to us that because of this, anyone that was affected in the cyber attack, they're going to give them a new date of death?
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, but you see, you can tell, you can see, in fairness, is that Ben Scanlon, I keep getting his name wrong, Ben Scanlon for Gript, when he interviews any of these guys, he's the only one, and puts direct questions to them. They're like rabbits in headlights. They really haven't a clue what to say in response. They're so used to not having to answer questions that it's a shock to them. So it wouldn't. Yeah. So basically, you've got this. You found this error in the data. Did you go back to them then and say that, or?
Well, it was in. Jimmy produced an article based on it, and I thought that. I mean, sometimes I wonder. I thought this would blow it wide open. And you mentioned Gript. I sent him this stuff from the start as well, and especially that when we found the minister, this was something on a national level. I can understand they didn't want to go with the Kenny thing for a while, but when you had a minister putting his name to an error which hid excess deaths in Kilkenny, I thought maybe there's a story in it for them. I emailed back to him, but that's okay. That's a different thing. But Jimmy printed it and went out there again, and it's just no one reacted.
Tumbleweed,
yeah, crickets. A minister is standing over putting out figures there with his private secretary that effectively hide excess deaths in Kilkenny, which I'm trying to get out there anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just no one's interested.
And what's the reaction to Jimmy's articles in the Kilkenny Free Press? Is there much commentary on them? Are they getting read? Because I assume, unless no more than anyone, if this story wasn't getting traction, he'd have, there must be an appetite for it, or he's pushing it and pushing it.
I should explain, Jimmy Rattigan is a retired journalist. He was editor of Kilkenny People, and he has Kilkenny Best Eyes. If you actually click onto it, which you probably have, it's a very professional site.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
But he uses it just as you see some of the articles on it. It's just he supports locals, charities, and people doing things like that. And he doesn't really charge for the ads or anything like that. It's an outlet for him, and he uses it. But he decided he was going to, when he got this story, he was going to run with it, and he has. And it's not a question of are people going to click on it. Jimmy is going to follow this through. Mm-hmm. This wouldn't have got to where I wouldn't be sitting here today without Jimmy. You can talk about the data you want, but this would have died a death. Mm-hmm. There's only so much bang on my head I could have done, and I've done a lot of it. And the stuff Jimmy has done has allowed me to keep going, keep banging my head against some doors, and I won't stop for a while anyway. Mm-hmm. But Jimmy has his website, and he has a Facebook page with the same thing appears on it, and getting lots of likes, lots of clicks on it, and then other people outside. I think, can link it to their sites. I don't know how that works, Jerry.
No,
but
no,
I
I
know
was just, yeah.
massive sharing goes on, and especially the last article, which
Mhm.
just went through the roof. And I think I took the crazy step 2 weeks ago to get on Twitter. I really didn't know what I was doing. I think I sent something to you at one stage, and I
All
didn't
right.
even know if people were getting them or not. And
Mhm.
but what I decided to do was I'd pick famous Kilkenny people in inverted commas and send them something, and hoping they would retweet it, the articles, and try and get it out there, and try. And I think it worked to a certain extent, but the last
Yeah, no.
article Jimmy wrote is just gone. Whatever to say, I don't know.
Why don't you take us through the last article and the last kind of data that you've been working on, or the most up to date data that you've been working on?
Well, the last one really was the December figures, Jerry, and that Jimmy always, when we're putting the figures out there, points the finger at local media saying nothing, national media, government, and councillors and TDs. He doesn't mention the names. He doesn't have to, and he's very exact about it. And what we did in the last one, and I asked him to do it. I asked him to put the grid up of my figures for the 5 years and the 6 months, that anyone, and for the sudden deaths and overall deaths, that anyone could say, okay, I'm going to check out this fella's figures. No one has come back and said there's nothing wrong. This this Twitter thing is a great discovery for Jerry. You can get into people's eyesight, and they don't want you there, and they can't get rid of you. I've pinned a couple of tweets to coming up on KCLR and stuff like that to do with local politicians, and I'd say they must be furious, but I'm only speaking the truth. And
No. Look, you're hard to. You're a good combination, the duo of you, because he's got a life history in journalism. You're obviously you just as much as we'd like to say these things don't matter, it probably helps that you're an accountant, in terms of public perception. So you're not that. You're hard to pin off. You're hard to throw them out at, oh, don't mind those crazy far right people, because you can't really do that to you. So the only option then is what you see is silence,
yeah,
and that's that's all. Hope
and
that you go away, kind of thing. That's
yeah, it's chilling in a way, Jerry. It's chilling that you can send. And I made the decision early on. This had to be local, everything, because this would have been lost. Even if you made it a southeast thing, it would have been lost. No one paid any attention to it. But I kept it local, and I didn't get involved with local TDs at the start, because I said, let's pin it on the councillors. Let's get them something to put their teeth into and see what they rise to it. And unfortunately, they haven't. But my experience with the local Kilkenny people and KCLR, I should have known, because I'm aware of mainstream media is bought and paid for the last 10, 15 years. I knew that, but still, for what I've experienced local here, when you're talking about deaths of Kilkenny people dying in them numbers, and no one will engage with you. I don't know if you want me to go through my experience with KCLR.
absolutely.
I think this is important, not just for Kilkenny, but so people recognise that this is happening in your area. Okay, now I'll be as careful as I can in what I'm saying, but some things have to be said. Now, they got the KCLR. It was sent to their news, whatever email address that you send your news stories to. They got the spreadsheets with the links, the summary of the data, the whole lot. I put my name and address at the bottom, my phone number. I said I'm available if you need me to go through anything with me. I did not want to be going on air. I had no interest. I gave them the data, run with it. That was my idea. No one got in touch. 2 weeks later, what did I do? I emailed to one of their top presenters. No reply. I rang I got another one of the presenters answered the phone, the news desk, knew nothing about it, but said, "Will you email it to my personal address here, KCLR email address, and I'll make sure they get it." I did it, and she acknowledged getting the same stuff again.
Okay, so she acknowledged receipt of it.
Yes,
That
yes,
person, okay.
yeah. I rang. Now at this stage, I'm talking about people dying in the droves. I thought I'd be getting someone ringing back. No one rang back. I think I 2 days later, I rang again. Now in the meantime, I was doing what I call poking the bear, sending links from Jimmy's articles saying the truth bus is leaving town and stuff like this. And I rang again. Someone else answered, and they said, "Oh, they're out on a road broadcast today. When someone comes back, they'll ring you, or I'll get someone to ring you, whatever." No one got back. Now I kept poking the bear until the 6th of December, and they just couldn't. At that stage, I thought they were going to do what you said. They're going to stay silent, but they couldn't resist it. And I was just seeking they had to get back with a patronising email. Now this was sent to me, and I'm sending them. They're a Kilkenny radio station, and they're getting verifiable data of people dying in droves. I'm not making any speculation as to what's causing it, and this was sent to me. "Dear Mr. Walsh, thank you for your recent email concerning what you say is a spike in deaths. I have read the contents and your comments on the figures you have assembled. I note there has been some discussion in Dáil Éireann recently about a possible increase in excess deaths. I also note the CSO and the Department of Health have made some initial comments. As a media organisation with a strong sense of our public service obligation, we are conscious of the need to establish facts and run stories that are verified at the highest level, particularly where citizens' health and well-being is concerned." Just listen to that phrase, Jerry. Verified at the highest level. Facts have to be verified at the highest level.
But this is just think about what they're saying to you there. They're journalists. They're supposed to be asking the questions. They're supposed to be digging for the information. And what are they saying? We only run stories that are verified at the highest levels, is basically drip fed into us, and we'll present them. We'll present those facts.
I got a lovely patronising comment again today. I like this. "We will monitor any reports and analysis of excess deaths during and after the COVID epidemic, and we will of course report on findings as they emerge." They won't go looking for them.
No.
As they emerge. And where will they emerge from? Maybe the government.
But the thing about it is, even if I thought you were, thought you were crazy, right? In a sense, in my head, I would bring you on the show, and here's what I would do: I'd bring you on the show, and I would go to the nth degree to disprove what you're saying, and then do it that way. Have the debate, and destroy in the debate. But they don't want the debate because they know the underlying data is correct. Like it's not like this isn't rocket science. This is like just going through the data and asking the questions and putting the pressures on. Now, the other problem you're having with the politicians is related to, I got a transcript. I'll give you an example. I got a transcript of a county council meeting recently from a county that shall remain nameless. And throughout this county council meeting were local county councillors talking about the far right and fascists and this kind of stuff. And I'm looking at these people are talking about people in their own local constituencies as kind of far right. We have to be careful in case the far right elements come in. And I'm thinking the brainwashing that's gone on in our political class is unreal. So these you're fighting an uphill battle with the politicians. Anyway, I can say I know just on different subjects on because they're basically they're taking their scripts from up above, the next steps on the ladder above them in whatever political parties there are. You might have a chance with the odd independent that'll stick their neck on the line. But I find that fascinating from KCLR there. No?
I mean, I that story. I'll finish off that story now in a second, Jerry. But I have to laugh. You're from a rural area, the same as me. How many fascists do you see when you're walking on the town?
I don't know, the mind warping of our establishment classes over 3 years has been absolutely bonkers. It's like this. When I grew up, I don't know if you feel the same way about it. Is when we grew up, we say we're similar aged. We always thought of ourselves first as Irish. I was go anywhere, I'm Irish. Increasingly, and second, you're Irish and you're white. But nowadays, they want you to be white first so they can throw labels and stuff like this at you, and Irish second. And they're rapidly eradicating Irishness in various ways around the thing, because I don't think these people actually know the meaning of the word fascism. Like I don't know what they're talking. I don't think they know what they're talking about.
But that's the problem, Jerry. You can't engage with people like that, who are throwing phrases out there that don't even understand. I mean, you only get frustrated. I'd only get frustrated. I couldn't deal with anyone like that. I can debate figures, I can debate attitudes, but when someone throws a label at you that they don't even know what it means, what are you supposed to do? And then you turn around and walk away, they say, oh, look, he is a fascist, or he's a racist, or he's a this. I don't pay any attention to those people, Jerry, and I don't engage with them. And because I just wouldn't be able to handle it, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Sorry, now I went off on got a bit emotional there myself. So,
but before I forget, like the KCLR story, like when I was doing it that stage, I was poking the bear. I wanted a response, and I could not believe that person put that. I know that person put that in writing on an email. So just after Christmas, I was sitting around, nothing to do. I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lodge a complaint with the BAI about the fact that they will not deal with these matters. Now, I don't know if you're the BAI complaints online process. This is unbelievable. You have to go in and lodge your complaint, but they'll tell you have to put down the date the program was you're complaining about, and what was this, what they spoke about that you're complaining about. See, but I wasn't complaining about anything like that, and I made it clear in my complaint that this is an act of omission of a life and death matter, and KCLR are in breach of their public service obligations. I had a lot of writing about it. I had the copies of the emails that I'd sent them. I had copies of the email from the presenter, and all the data explaining what went on here. Now, this is the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. These are supposed to have our back, Jerry, okay, if things are going wrong. Now, you think the KCLR reply was this? Just listen, this came back from, and I'm going to say his name because it's in public. This comes back from, now it's a big lot of rigmarole, but I'll read you the important part of it, and it's signed by a Mr. James Gunning, the Broadcast Complaints Officer in the BAI. And here we go. Dear Mr. Welch, I've received a complaint via BAI online and note the contents. From reading your complaint, I note you're not satisfied with how KCLR is choosing what it broadcasts, and you've commented on the omission of material that you think should have been included. Remember, we're talking about people dying here. It's not about I lost my dog and they won't put it out an ad for it. They say, down here he says, the BAI are only permitted to consider complaint referrals that are specifically about broadcast content, and in this case, your complaint is based on omission. We have therefore, listen to this, invalidated this complaint. Mm-hmm. These people have our back, huh? That's what you're dealing with.
No. They're there to manage the message, like, and to be honest with you, I kind of guess why KCLR, like what they sent to you was an exercise in covering their own arse in terms of the way they phrased it. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it all comes down to they're not actually independent radio stations as such. They're probably monetarily tied up with this era because of whether it's through vaccine, whether it's through advertising that governments are spending on all the local radio stations. I did an article myself recently where the government are spending, I think it's 6 or 8 million euros to produce 1,200 local radio station programs on climate change. So they're literally funding that programming. So it's like when you take, anytime you, this, I suppose the lesson for all of us is when you take money from the government in whatever capacity you take it from, it's never, there's no such thing as a free lunch. They're either buying your self-censorship, like an awful lot of what's going on now is self-censorship.
Yeah. It's insidious, Jerry. That's the way it works. There's never a price put on what they give you. It's just, when you look at your figures, you see, hold on now, how much is our ad revenue coming from government sources? We've got to be careful here. We've got to be careful what we say, and you self-censor. That's the phrase.
And they have their licenses. I don't know, is it every year their licenses come up from renewal? And I assume it's the same BAI or whoever the agency are you name there. They're probably responsible for that as well. So
yes, they are.
Again, there is, to call them independent is probably a misdirection, really, at this stage. Is even the ones that are independently owned, and there's not that many of them left because there's conglomerates and all this kind of stuff in the independent radio space. But even the ones that are independent, they're so heavily reliant on some of these types of, some of this type of funding. I kind of get it, but I think people, that's fine, but I think people should know, like what you're saying is happening.
Yeah, it's, I have a certain understanding for it, and I think you're right, Jerry. It's all right for me to give out about these figures that have been out there, but I know these people have jobs and there's people relying on it. But what we're saying there is basically everyone has a price to I'm not saying they're covering up anything, because I never wanted. I just want this data out there. So I wanted this data spoke of on KCLR and at the front page of the Kilkenny People, so Kilkenny people could see it and go and make their own discoveries. Look up, say why are so many people dying? I didn't want anyone putting down, this is the reason it's happening, because that's
well, no, but they could have taken your data, gone and looked at it themselves.
They must have, Jerry. They must have looked at it.
Yeah, but they didn't even need to mention you.
Yeah.
As long as the data was right.
That's it.
And they could have ascertained that themselves. Now, if it was wrong, I'm sure they'd be queuing up to tell you it's wrong. At this stage. But my interest, one question I have for you: the newspaper, the Kilkenny People. How did you would Jimmy have had any influence with them, or was there any?
No, Jimmy. First of all, I would say I'm not speaking for Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy was an editor of the Kilkenny People long ago.
All right, okay.
And I'm not going to speak for Jimmy, but
what was your experience?
My experience with them was sent it to the original one to the editor with all the data spreadsheets. No response. This is a major news story sent to the log. This paper's around for 130, 140 years. No response. Couldn't believe it. So then I knew then, okay, there's a conspiracy here of silence. I don't mean conspiracy with KCLR, but they're all doing the same thing. So I decided any email with a journalist correspondent on their newspaper, I emailed it to them and the editor again to see would anyone in their office stand up and say, sorry, Mr. Editor, I've got this great news story. Can we do something about it? No.
And did you even get a response to say, stop sending me this stuff?
No, nothing. I rang, asked to be put through to him. He wasn't available. Receptionist told me he'll ring you back. No response. I went down. I walked just outside Kilkenny. I was in the town. I think it was that day or the day after. And I walked into Kilkenny People after 2:00. No one knew who I was. And I asked the receptionist, could I speak to, I won't say the editor's name. And she said, yes, he's upstairs. I'll just see now. Will you see it? So she rang up and the conversation must have went like, well, who is it? And she said, who's calling? I said, Patrick Walsh. And next thing, he rang back down and said he's in a Zoom meeting and that he'd ring me later. Never contact me. So they that's the truth of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They might come on and they can't deny the emails without, and they got them. They can't deny I walked in there that day. I've kept a record of stuff I've done. Uh, even now, I that sort of stuff. Even when I think about it, Jerry, if it's like that in a local newspaper, they're afraid to not even make speculation of what's happening, but to put verifiable facts in the front of the paper. What's going on a national level? In the so-called Irish Times and Irish
Well,
Independent.
like you see, they're driving the narratives. I suppose the only thing you'd say is the local papers, in a lot of instances, are just accepting the narratives that are being handed to them. They're not questioning them too much. But what you'd say, I suppose, the media in the daily and weekend newspapers and national media are driving the agendas. Some of these agendas.
Do you think they're driving them, or are they being given the directions and told to drive in that direction?
I think there's certain narratives that the media want to drive. If you take the separate issue altogether. If you take the transgender ideology stuff, that seems to be a media-driven narrative for the most part. Government politicians, if you ask your local county councillor about transgenderism, I'd say he doesn't know. I'd say he knows very little about it. So I think a lot. It depends on it. I do actually think that the media are as culpable as our government in this. It's like an arranged marriage that's going on there between the two of them.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. I see. I have a problem with the media thing, and it's one thing to not be doing it, but the thing is, people out there of my generation and older believe they are doing it like they used to do in the past. The RTEs and newspapers in the past used to check up on politicians and question the narrative, and because it's not happening now, like people, if it happens on RTE, that's the truth for certain people of a certain age, and you can't to even say otherwise. They would look at you as if you got horns in your head. The same with the Irish Independent and the Irish Times. Of course, the Irish Times is the paper of record, Jerry. I mean, don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
And I've used this phrase, and other people have used it, and a lot of my emails sent are just so when the time comes, when the reckoning comes, none of these people can say they didn't know, and that's important.
It's important motivator as well, because I think if you keep doing it, they know that in the back of their head as well, that little thing. So that could actually be the thing that jumps one of them to take a bite of it eventually. Like it might, sometimes it feels like nothing is happening or you're not making headway, but you're very close to making a lot of headway in another way of looking at it. Because I do think that I just look at from talking to people that are, good citizens who've done it, who generally do what they're told. They just want to get on with their life, but who don't ask too many questions either. But I know nobody's talking about having got a booster or talking about vaccines, or you talk about climate change and they kind of go, oh, Jesus, another thing. And the deaths, especially at Christmas, because if you remember last Christmas when that Omicron variant swept in, it also swept away a lot of bullshit about the vaccines being preventing transmission, or the vaccinated were not getting sick, or this stuff. That blew that away. I think this Christmas we've had another unfortunately heavy flu season, and I think this might blow away the myth about the omerta over some of these excess deaths, because if it follows the pattern of other years, the last couple of weeks of January are normally when we get the heaviest of the flu season. So that and every year that translates into deaths. So I think this year, based on what you said about December, and we might just repeat those stats before we finish up again, just for 2020. But you know, it does get to a point where it's unavoidable, but you have to start talking about it.
Yeah, I've noticed. I started this back in the first week of November, and I've definitely noticed in the last few weeks, people come up to you and they might have known my position, and not that I was doing these articles, but that I didn't believe in this nonsense from the start, and they kind of say a little question, like they put a little thing out there, like maybe talking about nothing, and then say, they'll say as if talking to the fresh air, I don't think I'm going to get that old boosted up. And that's an open. They want you to encourage them to talk, and I think there's more people doing that now, and the freedom they get, it's like a load coming off their chest that they can say out loud and forgive themselves for what they've done to their own body, or maybe if they've encouraged other people, or God forbid they've children they've brought and taken these things. Jerry, could you imagine? Like, I have two sons, and could you imagine if you'd taken one of them, and you wake up every morning and wonder, is young Johnny ready for school? There's no sound of his room, and you're aware of the dangers that these vaccines have caused.
Well,
Every
and now
morning you must have a knot in your chest. Never mind about for your own health. I mean, what this has done on a psychological level to people won't be known for years. And I feel so sad for so ordinary people who just went along to get along. They didn't give out about other people not wearing their masks, or whatever. They just went along to get along, and because they thought the government was telling them the right thing. And they're just, I feel for them. I feel for those people. There's other people I have no sympathy for whatsoever, and we could list those.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you might just give us a roundup there of the year end figures for Kilkenny, in comparison to those years, and what the overall kind of excess deaths were tallying at.
Okay, I want to. We're talking about 6 months, July to December. That's what the figures comparison.
All right. Okay.
In that 6 months for 2022, with 553 deaths. That's for 2022. In 2019, pre-COVID, that's 391. Now that's an increase of 162, which is about 41%. That's 162 people. Leave the 41% out of it. In a full year, that's 324 extra people would be dying in Kilkenny. That's what, 5-7 a week? Just think about it. Kilkenny is a small place. I mean, that's just great. It's just, now go back to the pandemic year, where we were told, the whole world was going to collapse, and it was higher than previous years. It was 429 in those 6 months, compared to the 553 in 2022, which is 124 extra deaths, which is about, I don't know, it's not up another 20+% on the so-called pandemic year. Now, I know we talked about the subjectivity of the sudden death figures, but I will debate them with anyone who wants to look at my figures.
And what's your sudden death figures for that 6 month period in comparison, we'll say, to the 19 and the first pandemic year, we'll say? Do you have those numbers?
There's 81 sudden deaths, unexpected deaths in the 6 months in 2022. In 2019, there was 35, so that's over 100% extra. In 2020, there was 46. That's about 70 or 80%. It's 76%. So that, I mean,
and just so we say this, there is we're not trying to allege that there's one reason for this. There are, as far as I can say, I can think of 2 or 3 different types of reasons that are all to do with the pandemic, and that kind of stuff. Like even the suspension of normal health service for 2 years, basically. Missed appointments, missed checkups, missed no diagnosis of cancer or heart disease and all this stuff. We're not trying to allege that every single one of those deaths are to do with something around a vaccine. What we're saying is we should be questioning why these excess deaths are occurring.
That's it, Jerry. All anyone, me, or can put statistics out there is that these people died. Okay, there's no one going to dispute that with me and get away with it. So these people are dead, and there are way more people dead than should be, as far as I'm concerned. But I agree with you 100%. This can't all go down to just vaccine. It's not. It's missed health appointments. It's psychological pressure. It's all these things. But it's up to government, the people who lead us, to decide, okay, the starting point is here. Let's everyone accept there is excess deaths. But they won't accept that, because then that opens up the Pandora's box of saying, if we accept that, the next point is they have to say is there's a correlation between the introduction of the vaccines and the excess deaths. Now, I know correlation is not causation, but you've got to accept that as well. Now, if they accept that, all bets are off. They've got to stop the vaccines. That doesn't mean the vaccines are the cause of everything, but once they take them steps, that must happen. And then they investigate how many people missed appointments and did they subsequently die of whatever cancer. And that might be a very long job to do, but it's got to be done. It has got to be done to put people at rest. And something, Jerry, say they did it and they came back and all the excess deaths could be pointed out to missed appointments. I'd love to hear that. If it's the truth, I'd love to hear it. Because then
but you see, I think the broader thing is, no matter what caused it, right? Whether it was the an element of the mRNA vaccination regime, or the closure of the hospital sector, you could say, almost, or reduced functionality, it all comes back to government decision making, and that's the point, that'll have to be kind of bet out of them. But look at Patrick. I think we're going about an hour and 12 minutes there now. What I would say is I'm going to leave Patrick's email address in the description of this video. I'll also link to the recent article that was published on the Free Press, Kilkenny Free Press, as well.
KilkennyPress.ie, Jerry.
Or KilkennyPress.ie. And so you can go in and have a dive and look at the work that Patrick and Jimmy produced on this. And in fairness to both of you, if two or three people perform this exercise in every single county, what could we achieve if that happened, in terms of the amount of pressure building around the country on politicians and radio stations or papers or whatever? Somebody somewhere will put a crack in the dam, if you like. So I think it's just left to me to ask Patrick, is there anything I didn't ask you or you want to get out there, or is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
No, I'm very grateful for you to give me the opportunity to vent, put it that way, Jerry. And I hope I didn't upset any of your viewers. What I would say is I did put my email address out on the last article, and I did get a lot of contact from people with support, and 10 or 11 people looking for instructions how to do it for their county, and I did give them instructions. What I want to make clear is I am not collating data for any other county. I will let you know how to do it, and you can do it for yourself. If it's only to ease your own mind, do it. Yeah. Try and get it out there on Twitter or anywhere else. Off you go. But I will not be collating data for anywhere else. I'm not kidding.
No. But it's, a lot of people to ask what can they do. They often ask me, what can I do? I want to do something, or this is something, a practical thing that people in every county could, a group of people could do, and it could be kind of a community thing. Here's the deaths, let's do it as a gang. They don't have to do it on their own. But exactly. We'd be hoping that people just contact maybe a sheet of
the
what
last
to do.
point on that, Jerry. I think that's a great idea. If you had groups of people who leave the sudden deaths out of it, okay, and they decided we're going to pick Cavan and 10 or 11 people in a WhatsApp group, and they all go off and come up with their figures. I mean, imagine, they all come up with the same figures, and they're all going, okay, what are we going to do about this? And they sent it out on their WhatsApp, other groups. That stuff spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot unsee them figures. You cannot, and you cannot pretend they don't exist once you see them.
And the thing with those, that is, you don't have to be, when you're a member of the public like we are, and just ordinary Joe Soaps, Stephen Donnelly and Leo Varadkar, they're very far away from our accessibility. We can't get access to them. Whereas if you make it local to your county, you can find a county councillor within a 10-minute drive of you. You can find a newspaper within a 10-minute drive of you, or a radio station from 20 or 30-minute drive of you, and you can build pressure that way.
Yes.
So we might leave it at that. I'll write up a piece to go with this, and I'll mention maybe this. It would have been better if I brought this up earlier, but I'm only after thinking of it now. But I'll write this into the piece that maybe to only contact you for maybe bullet points of what to do or how you collate into data, so people can do it for themselves.
Yeah.
Perfect. Patrick,
thanks again, Jerry, and hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks a million. I'll just end the recording.